2,000 years earlier as Casca Longinus, no longer had any interest even in the curse laid upon him by the Nazarene, whose life he had plucked out on the cross with his Roman spear. Casca was convinced that the curse must now be about to end, that at any moment the man he had killed on Golgotha, if he were a man, would appear. Perhaps he was even one of the Rongaroa's crew. Casca knew that Jesus had been a fisherman of sorts when he wasn't preaching. Strange occupation for a carpenter's boy. He recalled the words of the dying Christ. "Soldier, you are content with what you are. Then that you shall remain until we meet again." For the many hundreds of years since that afternoon in Palestine, Casca had fought and suffered and never been allowed to die. His many scarred hide bore the marks of dozens of wounds that should have killed him, had killed him, but only for relatively short times, for days or weeks or months that had passed like moments in a dream. But this was different. Now he knew he really was dying. He rolled to the edge of the bunk and lolled his head over the side, trying to vomit, but only a few drops of watery dribble came from his mouth. He groaned and lay back. Yes, he thought, it makes sense. The one who had said he was the Son of God had cursed him to remain a soldier until he came again. He was doomed to walk the earth, fighting other men's battles, participating in other people's wars, an eternal mercenary, an eternal soldier, until Jesus came again, allowing him to pass on into that everlasting eternity, and finally, peace. And now that his last agony was really here, of course he was not dying as a soldier. He had been in no battle, suffered no wounds. The sea itself was killing him. God's mightiest ocean was tossing the life out of his suffering body, rolling the ship from side to side so that his eyes rolled in his head as if, when the ship lay on her side, they might meet in the one socket. Then, slowly, the ship would straighten up, the weight of its lead keel swinging it erect, the masts moving faster and faster until they were vertical, and Casca lay on his back, staring at the planks of the overhead. But the ship rolled on, the insides of Casca's body rolling with her, until the tug of the small storm sail pulled her back. Then she would come erect once more before lying down in the sea again. At the same time, she pitched fore and aft as the huge seas lifted her stern, rolled under her, then lifted her bow and dropped it as they rolled on their way. And Casca's insides would be lifted too, then dropped as though forever, then jerked up again by the next wave. Or, worst of all, his innards would be smashed down farther inside his body as an enormous following sea broke under the stern, lifting the whole of the ship itself from the sea. Sometimes one of these following seas would break on the deck, burying the ship, crushing it down, and Casca would feel his insides floating free inside his body. If he could have seen topside at these moments, he would have felt better. A quick and merciful drowning was certain. The whole of the ship, the crew, the deckhouses, the cargo, the whaler, everything except the two masts and the tiny foresail, disappeared under the sea, and for what seemed like an eternity, the sea held her there beneath the hundreds of tons of water. But at last, the wave would roll on its way, and another would lift the buoyant Rongaroa up and up and up, until she was perched on its peak, racing along with the wave. At these times, Casca felt his entrails trying to leave his body by way of his rectum, and a second later, as the ship plunged down the steep face of the sea, it seemed his guts must exit his body by way of his mouth. He didn't care. The irrelevant details of his imminent death didn't concern him. This wave must surely be the last. Alive yet? Then this one.